Antonio Brown has quickly become one of the most controversial names in not just the NFL, but in all of professional sports. Between his dramatic ending in Pittsburgh, where it seemed like he was doing everything in his power to get out of the Steel City, his less than stellar offseason with the Raiders that just so happened to coincide with the arrival of the Hard Knocks camera crew, and of course his brief but equally dramatic stint with the New England Patriots, not to mention a collection of incidents both online and in real life sprinkled throughout. There have been plenty of guys to come and go that have earned the dubious distinction of troubled superstar, or something to that effect. And to be honest, that's just the reality of the business. When there is that much money, power, and influence at stake, of course some guys will let their egos get the best of them. But with Brown, it seemed to come out of nowhere. During the first few seasons of his career, the sum of his efforts and his production painted a completely different picture of Brown. In fact, he couldn't have appeared to be anything further from his devaluing label that has since been attached to him. Not only was he strangely slept on coming out of high school, where he played running back, quarterback, and wide receiver, and was a two-time All-State selection, but his status as a walk-on at Central Michigan did little to inspire NFL scouts. Even when he was coming off an impressive 2009 college season, during which he hauled in 110 passes for nearly 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns, it seemed like all scouts saw was another small school guy padding his stats. In fact, he was projected to be a 5th or 6th round draft selection heading into the draft, and was ranked just at 37th best wide receiver by NFLDraftScout.com. And while the latter projection was painfully inaccurate, the former ended up being on the money, as Brown had to wait until the 6th round of the draft when the Pittsburgh Steelers finally took a chance on him with the 195th overall pick. That made him the 22nd of the 27 wideouts taken in that year's draft, not to mention the second by the Steelers alone. Fortunately for Pittsburgh, the first one is Emmanuel Sanders, who was no slouch in his own right. But you would be hard-pressed to find anyone that would rather have peak Sanders over peak Brown. But for Brown, this was just another chip on his shoulder, another slight to prove wrong. And as if he needed any more added motivation, he elected to choose his jersey number based off of this, as a way to remind himself and keep him moving forwards towards his ultimate goal. 8 times 4 is 32. 32 teams look past me, even the Steelers. So every time I go out there, it's a little added motivation, he explained back in 2015. There's a little bit of mental gymnastics taking place there, but whatever, the sentiment rings true. And you know what? He had a right to be ticked off, because even if he never plays another down of football in the NFL, he will still go down as the best wideout in the 2010 draft class by far. And this was a draft class that had some pretty decent wideouts. So today we're gonna take a look back at those other 21 guys that were taken before Antonio Brown and see where they're at today. In fact, you might be surprised to find out that there are actually some pretty great players on this list. So weirdly enough, for a draft that was deep with receiver talent, the first guy didn't come off the board until the 22nd overall pick, when the Denver Broncos took Demaryius Thomas out of Georgia Tech. Thomas had a phenomenal NFL career, having been a huge part of the Super Bowl 50 champion Broncos team and racking up 5 Pro Bowls and 2 first-team All-Pros along the way. It makes sense that his draft stock was affected by the fact that he did not actually participate in combine drills due to injury, as he also battled through a slew of injuries early on in his career. However, whether it was a change to his training methods or his diet or whatever the case, after those injury-filled first 2 years in which he started just 7 games, he burst onto the scene in 2012 and began to resemble that big play guy that we saw at Tech. Now 32, turning 33, Thomas is clearly on the decline, bouncing around a few different teams over the past couple seasons, most recently with the Jets in 2019. The next guy off the board was, like Brown, another outspoken Pro Bowler, none other than Dez Bryant of Dallas Cowboy fame. Dez was a beast in college, putting up a 19 touchdown and nearly 1,500 yard season as a sophomore in 2008 at Oklahoma State. But like Thomas, his draft stock fell ahead of the 2010 draft, except this time for different reasons. Bryant had been ruled ineligible for most of the 2009 season after violating an NCAA bylaw when he failed to fully disclose his interaction with former NFLer Deion Sanders to the NCAA. Obviously, this didn't stop the Cowboys from taking a chance on Dez with the 24th overall pick, but it's probably what kept him on the board just long enough for Jerry's boys to scoop him up. Dez racked up 3 Pro Bowls and a first-team All-Pro in 2014 when he led the NFL in receiving touchdowns. He battled injuries towards the end of his career, and at this point, it remains to be seen whether or not the 31-year-old wideout will ever play in the NFL again. So the 2 receivers taken in the first round, while not Antonio Brown, who really is in a class of his own, were very solid pros, and I doubt that their respective teams have much buyer's remorse. Now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who took the first wide receiver in the second round, well, it's a pretty safe assumption that they don't feel the same way about their pick. While Aurelius Ben has been one of the cooler names we've ever heard, he did very little to inspire any hope that his performance on the field would live up to his slick name. During 5 underwhelming seasons, Ben caught just 65 passes and didn't eclipse the 1,000-yard mark for his entire career. Seattle, who took the second and final receiver off the board in the second round, found a winning pick in Golden Tate out of Notre Dame. Although Tate had modest production in Seattle and played in the shadow of Calvin Johnson for a while in Detroit, he has proven to be one of the most reliable pros in the game, and eventually earning his due by making a Pro Bowl team in 2014. Again, not Antonio Brown, but certainly not Aurelius Ben either. The third round saw a run on wide receivers take place, as there were 8 that came off the board, and 4 consecutively between picks 87 and 90. But amongst the group, the only Pro Bowler as a receiver was Emmanuel Sanders, who the Steelers also had the good fortune of taking. The 2 wideouts taken before him were Damian Williams, who went 77th to Tennessee, and Brandon LaFell, who went at 78 to the Panthers, and neither of them became 1,000-yard receivers. And so while LaFell put together a nice career winning a Super Bowl in New England, his most recent playing days in Oakland were somewhat disappointing. And he, like so many other guys on this list, seems to be done in the NFL. But at the very least, he made it a full 4 seasons longer than Williams, who was out of the league by 2014. Of the rest of the guys taken in the third round, Eric Decker was the only one to make any sizable impact. Despite never having made a Pro Bowl, Decker did record 3,000-yard seasons, 2 with Denver and 1 with the New York Jets, before finishing off his career in 2017 with 1 unproductive season in Tennessee. As for the rest of the guys, Jordan Shipley, Andre Roberts, Armonte Edwards, and Taylor Price, none of them lasted in the NFL through the 2014 season, with the exception of Roberts, who found a nice niche as a return man. Although you'd ideally want a wideout taken in the third round to be able to contribute a little bit more to the offense than Robert does, the fact that he's lasted in the league this long does say quite a bit about his effectiveness as an NFLer. I mean, there's a reason Buffalo signed the dude as a 31-year-old returner in 2019. Now, if you thought the crop of guys taken before Antonio Brown in the third round was bleak, just wait till you see this haul in the fourth. Marshawn Marty Gilliard went 99th to the Rams and made just 8 catches in the NFL. Mike Williams went to Tampa Bay out of Syracuse at 101, and although he got off to a strong start in his NFL career, nearly recording a 1,000-yard season as a rookie, injuries unfortunately hampered his progression, and he hasn't played a snap since 2014. Marcus Easley, the 107th overall pick to Buffalo out of UConn, had just 3 receptions. And Jacoby Ford, who along with his 4.28 40-yard dash was of course taken by the Oakland Raiders, made a few big plays during his rookie season, but it flamed out of the league by the end of 2013. Really, it only got worse as the draft progressed, which I guess is to be expected. After all, it's not every draft that there's a talent like Antonio Brown available at the 6th round. The only decent pro taken in the 5th round was Riley Cooper, who was a starter for Philly for 6 seasons after they took him 159th overall out of Florida. David Reed, who was taken 3 picks before Cooper by Baltimore, had some success as a return man, but only notched 6 catches in the NFL. And Kerry Meyer, who went 6 picks after Cooper to Atlanta, well, that investment was even less fruitful, as Meyer never even recorded a single catch in the NFL. Which finally brings us to the 6th round, where the final 2 wide receivers were fatefully selected before Antonio Brown. Carlton Mitchell, who was taken the 177th overall by the Cleveland Browns, and Desmond Briscoe, who was taken at 191 by the Bengals. You gotta think that these two AFC North bottom dwellers wish that they had the foresight to take Brown instead of these two, don't you think? Between the two of them, they made 46 NFL receptions for 533 yards in their NFL careers, which obviously isn't Antonio Brown level production. And then, finally, with the 195th overall pick in the draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers selected AB. While it will forever remain a mystery how talents like Brown fall this far in the draft, at least it provides us an entertaining opportunity to look back a few years. And like always, wonder what in the world the NFL general managers were thinking. But hey, are there any other NFL players whose draft class you'd like to learn about? If you got any good ideas, let us know in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button actually helps out a ton, and we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a really good idea as we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.